Patrick, welcome to Mitiga Mic.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. I know we were just at Black Hat recently talking, and we're like, well, let's get you on the show. There's so much that we want to do together. But before we jump in, give our listeners a little bit of background on who you are and what do you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick Orzechowski. Folks call me PO to shorten my long syllable name. Field CISO at Torq currently, and been in cybersecurity for about 25 years. Started on the blue team side, moved to the red team side. Now I do, field stuff and work in purple and having fun with all the AI stuff as well. So pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned AI, and I want to jump right in because unless you never left your hotel room at Black Hat, like I was even at the crafts table, people are asking me about agentic AI. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
11
everywhere.
But anyways, everyone's talking about AI. So, from your perspective, how do you see AI affecting security ops? And I know this is a massive question to ask, but you have such a deep and long background in SOCs. Let's start off there with how is AI going to impact that for the better or the worse?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it as well as a longtime expert and practitioner. But I would say, I don't think we're going to get rid of humans in the SOC anytime soon, right? I think there will be humans in the loop when you start thinking about like all of the hype around agentic AI and the SOC and doing those things. A lot of what folks are doing are very black box, non-transparent things that are based on event-driven decisions, right, versus data-driven decisions. And it's very, very difficult, in the data science world to take a week's worth of data, a month's worth of data, and make those, creative connections to identify malicious activity. So I think AI will affect the SOC in the way that AI is affecting productivity in other areas of industry and work to help improve folks' efficiency and improve their day-to-day lives, right? That's kind of how I look at AI at this point. But as far as replacing the SOC or, that silver bullet that we've been looking for, I don't think is there. I mean, speaking of all the EDR bypasses that have come out in the last week, just go to show you that nothing is a silver bullet, nothing is magic, and we still have to, grind it out in the SOC.
Yeah, 100%. And really, I see AI as yet another tool. I'm sort of downplaying it as a tool, but another tool to help augment human intuition and human investigation and analytics and creativity and things like that. So I think it makes it better. And I think all the way back, like going all the way back to my very first startup, which was RipTech, which was an MSSP. We ended up selling it to Symantec. So it's been lost in the history of security vendors.
Absolutely.
At this point.
We talked about this. I was an engineer analyst at Symantec, what became RipTech.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, even then we had pretty, I don't want to call it basic, but certainly legacy at this point, ways of approaching analytics with pattern discovery and anomaly detection and different kind of pattern matching and volumetric and temporal analysis. And arguably that could even be considered like a first gen of like statistical AI, depending on how you define it. But there was never a point where we said, oh man, we're just going to run these scripts. We're going to run this code and we can go ahead and cut our SOC by half. What it did is it made our teams more efficient and effective in firefighting and allowed people to be more strategic in other areas and really get ahead of it. The thing about security, and let me know if you're seeing this in the field too, because I know we're both in the field a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of security folks. I'll use the analogy of a race car team. They're sitting there, they're tuning the car, they're getting the best wheels on there, the best fuel, tuning the engine, the carburetor. They're doing all these things, but they rarely actually get out on the racetrack and then start getting to that next level. And I feel there's always this, always trying to get there, man. And I think AI will kind of help them get to that spot so they can say it's actually reality where, you know what, our teams can focus on strategic things now. It's not just the typical
Yeah.
fire. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great analogy. You can actually go out and run the race now instead of just prepping for the doomsday scenario when someone hacks your, network. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I look at it as uh, kind of a kickstart to augmenting your SOC skill set.
Mm.
Back in the day, we used to have, I was really good at pulling apart ELF binaries, to make a deep reference, right? And then everything that was Linux and ELF, I got, right, or Linux kernel related, got routed to me in the SOC because I was the Linux ELF guy, right? And then we had a PowerShell guy eventually, and a Bash shell gal, and all those things, right? Like, so I think AI can be that mentor, that person that says, okay, you're an expert in PowerShell. Here's how it works on a Linux machine, right? Or vice versa, right? It allows you to kind of bypass those really deep learning capabilities that took guys like you and me years to build those skill sets, right?
Yeah.
And now they're in models for us to exploit. And I'm seeing that every day. I'm personally using those things, right? I was never a PowerShell or Windows AD expert, but AI is helping me get up to speed on a lot of those things.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned something earlier as well, and we didn't see this, quote unquote, back in the day, but just the volume of logs and alerts that are coming through, and we'll use the cloud environment. Of course, Mitiga focuses on cloud,
Mhm.
but the just the sheer volume, and for example, we retain 3 years of log and alert data per customer in the cloud, and that can be super voluminous. It's rarely in the terabytes. It's often in the petabytes. I haven't seen exabytes yet, but I'm sure it's around the corner. But you mentioned
Sure.
earlier, it's kind of challenging for a human or humans to process that level of data
Yeah.
with any level of granularity that's really going to allow them to find the malicious or nefarious, bits in there amongst all the rest of the noise. And I think AI can certainly help addressing that volume as well.
I completely agree. And we've hit some limits, definitely human limits on analyzing data. Probably when you and I were in grade school, we hit those limits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as like the sim is concerned, right? Like what's next after the sim? Um, you have Lucene on the one hand with Elastic, MapReduce on the other hand with the Splunks of the world, and you have all the open source stuff that's out there, and you try and speed up your searches for long term storage, like you're saying, but those analytics queries take a long time, and if you don't get it just right, you're going to miss something, right? The one thing that's really cool about a model that leverages long-term data science is that it never sleeps, right? And it can use a moving window when looking at those things. So if you're a threat hunter, I think I see absolute use cases in the threat hunting landscape. So if you're keeping 3 years at Mitiga, I mean, that's fantastic data, right? Because there might be an attack that's happening right now. I go back to SolarWinds, right? That we've missed for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, but you can go back and identify those customers from a managed services perspective who've been exposed to that attack. So I think AI can definitely help with those things in the SOC, and with the addition of humans, you don't want to have AI make the decision to just cut off your cloud services
Yeah.
willy-nilly, right? But yeah, so
Yeah, it really is a sort of a new age, and I think it's allowing us to get so much more detailed at a much more rapid pace, and then say, hey, these 5 things across this petabyte of data look suspicious. Human, go ahead and, and take a closer look and,
yeah,
and see.
yeah,
But that kind of brings up an interesting thing. You sort of alluded it to it at the end there, which about, we're not going to shut off connection. Let's talk about automation, right?
Yeah.
It's all, AI and automation and AI. The two of these things are going together so well now. They're really synonymous. But what's the role of automation playing now in sort of this modern SOC, this next generation of SOC?
Yeah, and fantastic topic because I see it every day. I mean, this is what we do at Torq, right? Is automate the SOC and automate outside the SOC, right? The term hyper automation, however you feel about it, right, is the promise that we can automate things and processes that took a ticket, right? So traditionally the SOC would get an event from an EDR, for example, and then create a ticket and then send it off to the help desk to contact the customer that they've been infected and lock the account, those types of things. So that takes a lot of time, right? And there's a lot of lag time in between that the attacker might pivot. They might detect something that the SOC is doing before the help desk can get to those things. So I think the role of automation is increasing, and AI will help with it. The agents will help, but I caution folks, right? So this is what we do at Torq. I caution folks to not trust AI right out of the box. You want that transparency and the reasoning behind it. The key is prompt engineering on your AI agents, right, for automation. So a lot of the folks in the market are building products that just take a prompt to go out and do something for folks. I would caution everyone to do everything deterministically that they possibly can, right? Whether it's cloud detection and response like Mitiga does or whatever, let's do it deterministically first with step-by-step logical instructions. And if you need AI to do things like interact with a user from a model perspective, go ahead and do that, but don't just blindly trust it as a black box.
Yeah. It's, I guess the fear that I have with some organizations is they think exactly that. Oh, now I have this. I don't need these other things or these other people or processes that have been put in place and built up
Yeah.
over the last few decades. And man, don't do that. don't go ripping out people that
Yeah.
are actually know how to do this because you think this thing
Or
is going to get
system,
there. Yeah.
right? Or systems. I mean, I'm sure there are systems at places we've worked as practitioners that are still in place, like Python scripts that are just old, but they work, right?
Yeah.
If they automate something and it runs every night and it's rock solid and it does what it's supposed to do, right? So I look at it as a building block, right? You build your base deterministic automation, and then you layer in the AI capabilities, right? Not
Yeah.
just as a co-pilot, but as a decision maker at this point. So making sure that it has access to the APIs that it has access to, and you put those guardrails on. It's kind of what scares me about MCP, right? Is it's very hard to put those guardrails on when you just give it a token and let it go. It strikes fear in me when folks start talking about that as a decision making engine.
Yeah. For sure. I like to think that some of my corn shell scripts from back in my sim days at Arcset are still running someplace somewhere doing something, but
Absolutely.
I'm sure they're broken.
I actually found some of my old Perl stuff
Oh
from
yeah.
from Slim Devices that got bought by Logitech, and they open sourced their code way back like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I wrote some Perl, and I was like, I think I wrote that. And I look back, and yeah, of course I committed it way back in the day.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I remember this this is even before I was at Bell Labs. When I was at DISA, I was put on this project down in Fort Huachuca, and I got to work with Perl, and everybody was so jealous because that was like the new cool thing. And they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, dude, you get to do Perl? Oh my God, that's so awesome!" I'm like, "Yeah, man, this is cool."
Shout out to all the Perl coders out there. I mean, if there are any left, feel free to contact me. But yeah, Perl was the first thing that I learned, and you have to kind of be a glutton for punishment with that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, Perl and like expect scripts and things like
Oh
that.
yeah,
Oh my God,
yeah. And
like for updating routers and switches.
Yeah. It's kind of it's you're reminded of the finite memory when you were dealing with Perl, right? Because it would take when I was doing forensics, it would take a 4 gig Excel file and just eat it up and blue screen to death, right?
Yeah.
And that, like, let's talk about glutton for punishment. I think AI helps with this too. Is like, I was never really great at writing elegant code, which is why I was never, a full time developer
Yeah. Same,
or
same.
regex, right?
Yeah.
Regex was always a tough one for me, and I wrote really inefficient regex, and the experts would laugh at me. But AI now can figure that efficient regex out pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
And it works. So I think that's another boon to folks who are trying to solve problems that are really complex,
Yeah.
and outside the box. So when that tier 1, tier 2 is automated, you can accelerate your time to detect and time to respond on advanced attacks as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. That you used to have to grep, set, and awk your way into like your starting point, right? And now you're like, oh, here it is.
Yeah,
I can start here.
yeah, and there'd
So
be a weird character in the middle of the file, and you just be like,
yeah.
it was, yeah,
Who put two backslashes here?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the other thing, and this isn't just a black hat thing, but we're just seeing this in the field all the time. So AI, automation, another big one is, or two other big ones are cloud and identity. And again, those two
yeah,
just go together. Um, if you look at cloud identity threat detection and response, clearly it's a hot topic. But what are you kind of seeing in the field as people are trying to get their arms around this whole notion of, cloud security? That it is cloud infrastructure, but
yeah,
it's also all your identity controls and workload processing, Office 365, and it's also all your gazillion SaaS applications, everything from Slack and Workday to
yeah.
Snowflake and everything in between. Um, and this is such a broad question, but cloud and identity threat detection, kind of what are you seeing in the field in terms of people trying to get their arms around that operationally?
Yeah. What I'm seeing is the point solutions are good, but bringing those point solutions into an aggregator or a managed service is not going away anytime soon,
Yeah.
right? We talked about petabytes of data, right? I mean, you could have all the AWS data you want, but you're always going to have hooks, like you said, into other SaaS applications for your enterprise that you need data for. And that visibility is one of the gaps that I've been talking about for a long time. It really sucks because you're beholden to that SaaS application to give you that data, right? If you're an Okta customer, you can't get the raw logs. You get the logs that they decide to send you, right? As a SaaS provider. So
Yeah.
you have to correlate those logs with what happened on the endpoint, maybe what happened in the browser. We talked about all the magic browser stuff that's coming out in the field. That's we see a Black Hat as well. Like, I would never thought like you could sell browsers at some point. Like, I thought that was done with IE and Netscape, but people are
Yeah.
still selling browser technology, right? But that's where humans interact with computers at this point. So I think the endpoint really is the identity at this point. You
Mm.
have to isolate what the identity does, what the role is in the organization, and keep it static. I mean, I'd love to hear your take on this because I've had, arguments about this with folks who are dinosaurs like us.
Yeah, it's funny. So is it really the new perimeter or is it really the new endpoint? And it is the thing. So here's a great example. You hire somebody to come in and do some red teaming. Maybe they're doing a pen test in your organization, and you
Mm,
have very specific guardrails. I need you to go after these systems at this time, but don't touch that system. And if you get in here, don't do that. There's all these things. Well, attackers don't care about your disparate business units and politics and timing. And this is end of quarter, so you can't do it. They don't care about that. Well, in the cloud, everything that makes the cloud powerful also makes it weak, and that's the meshed nature of it. So if someone gets into, we'll just use GitHub because everybody uses it, not to pick on GitHub though, and they get a whole bunch of secrets, and they get some, maybe there's some credentials in there, maybe there's some APIs and tokens, and they get some stuff. And from there, okay, lo and behold, now they can get into Slack. And then once they get
Yeah,
there, now they can pivot, and now they're in Office 365. And from there, now they're in your AWS instances. And everything is stuck together. And it's not just your stuff, it's all your supply chain and
yeah,
partners and things like that. So there's this massive ecosystem. Well, what's it all tied to? It's tied to the identity portion.
absolutely. Yep.
And that is so, and most organizations today, especially enterprises, they're not going to have one identity solution. They're going to have multiple identity solutions. And there's going to be some on-prem stuff, there's going to be stuff in the cloud, and getting their arms around that is really complex. And then you multiply this by the fact that, well, my identity solutions, like take Salesforce, right? Salesforce is a great SaaS application. Everybody uses it. But if you're trying to track a specific identity in Salesforce, I mean, each one requires like a differential equation to determine what it actually is. I mean, it's
Yeah,
really, really complex. And then you've
right.
got tools like Slack. Slack is great. We all use Slack. But unless you have Slack Enterprise, you're not even getting any logs, right? And there's all these
Absolutely.
little isms. And if you've got Office 365, again, another popular app, you only get 7 days of logs. You can go back 90 days, but you can't do it through an API. You have to use it through a PowerShell script, and it's intentionally throttled, and it takes more than a month to get a month of data. And don't let me go down that path. So
You've been where
it's
I
crazy.
yeah, it's nuts to try and correlate all of that data. And I think we're getting towards a time where service providers, detection response providers, and data providers even have to think about, what are the key elements
Mhm.
to identifying what happened with a user, or now think about AI identities. I mean, you give an agent a role, right? We have it at Torq. You give it a role in the AI agent capability, right? You're a SOC analyst that has access to blah, right? Um, how do you track that? What's the transparency? How do you define that role? Do you onboard an agent like you would an HR human? I
Yeah.
mean, philosophically, we can go. That's a big
So I
rabbit
have a
hole.
table for non-human identities, like my NHI table, right? And I just
Yeah,
track that. Yeah. And I think the answer is probably going to be yes.
I think we
Um,
have to.
I,
I think
I,
we're gonna have to get to that point.
I think you're right. It's one of those things that is so fundamental now to the way we operate. We can no longer just say because honestly, identity was often seen as a non-security kind of thing. This was done by IT operations, not necessarily security operations, but it's been quickly merged, right? I've
Right.
seen a lot of things happen like IoT. IoT is a lot of finger pointing. Is it physical security? Is it facilities? Is it what who manages our cameras and our printers and our digital door locks, and that kind of got meshed in.
Right.
But yeah, that's a big one. Well,
Yeah, we're gonna need a convergence there for sure. And you said something that piqued my interest, was that the attackers don't care about politics, and these systems are critical and downtimes. I would counter that with, they actually do care, because if you look at the attack vectors and timing that they use, there's not a coincidence that we see things around the holidays, right?
yeah,
It's not a coincidence that we see things on the weekends. Like, they know when the advanced security practitioners are on vacation, or on the weekends and nights. They're pretty sly when it comes to when they do their attacks. And
yeah.
that goes all the way back to the APT attacks. Like, we'd see it, when we clocked out, they clocked in. And then when we clocked in, they were clocking out, right? So
Yeah. Well,
um
well,
yeah,
and back to the sort of the identity story there, right? So something's happening at midnight on Saturday, right? And
yeah,
your best folks probably aren't there. And it's maybe it's over a holiday, even whatever. Something's going on. Well, now you've got somebody that, again, we'll use that meshed example before, where somebody got in through one thing, and then they're doing something over here, and now they're running a whole bunch of reports, and now they're downloading a bunch of data. So but if you don't know that person, that's PO doing all these 10
right,
things, and you probably don't if you're not mapping that back, right? Then these just look like maybe it's suspicious. Maybe somebody's running a backup. Maybe it's just this API doing what it's, I don't know.
yeah,
But when you look at it collectively, this very quickly goes from something that's innocuous to something that's actually suspicious to something that's actually clearly malicious. And it's that common key, right,
Yeah,
of either this non-human identity doing something naughty, or a regular human centric identity doing it, right?
absolutely. And the best threat hunters in the world, it takes them time to do those correlations, right? So the faster we can get all that data together and run those correlations and have AI identify those things that you need to look at versus that you don't need to look at. I made the analogy, I like your race car analogy. I made the analogy of a watchdog, right? There's a reason why security folks at facilities have dogs, right? And they'll smell or see or hear something that humans can't see. It might be, you know, just someone walking by the fence, completely innocently. It might be someone trying to cut through the fence, right?
Yeah.
But at least they tell you, hey, human, that's something you should look at, right? I think that's where we're getting with AI in the SOC and AI in security.
Yeah, for sure. On the watchdog thing, and completely aside, I was on Reddit the other day and I saw this thing. They're training Doberman pinchers who just look scary sitting there. It's like looking at a red Ferrari. It just looks fast sitting there. So, anyways, they've got these Doberman pinchers to guard primarily warehouses, it seemed like in this video, and they've trained them not to bark. So they
Really?
just go straight from detection to kill. And I was like, I'm like, what's that use case, man?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's something very sensitive that they're protecting. It's kind of that analogy would be like an AI agent that just kills the identity, right?
That's
Like
right.
you're just locked out. You fail MFA 2 times, boom,
Why
done.
would you log on at 2 a.m? Out.
Yeah, out. You're fired.
That's
And
right.
then you have access to nothing. Yeah, I think we're gonna see some stories about that stuff, right? Where AI agents go crazy and fire people or, rip them out of Salesforce when they're doing things that are not normal, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see those sorts of things. I saw one with a bank that deleted their S3 bucket and had no backup
Oh,
for something,
geez.
and it cost them I don't know how much with Amazon to get it back. They had to like physically go to the drives and USB drive
Oh
pull
my
the data.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah, it cost them way more than the AI agent was worth to restore the data. So
Well,
be careful.
I've seen people get much more cavalier in the last year or so in terms of response. I mean, and truth and it's no secret. We have a lot of joint customers. There's a lot of
Yeah,
integration between
for sure.
what Torq does and what we do at Mitiga, and we work together a lot, which is fantastic. And what we're seeing though is, because of a lot of the legal issues that a lot of CISOs are concerned with, and people going to jail and being sued, and they're getting outside counsel, and
Mhm.
that all makes them be a little bit more cavalier when they're saying, you know what, if I think something might be suspicious, instead of doing 10 checks, I might do 2 or 3 checks. But instead of deleting the S3 bucket, maybe they're just disabling that account,
Right.
or maybe they're quarantining something. Now, burning it down, that's a whole nother level of
Well,
response. But
yeah,
that very rapid response, sometimes before even human intervention, which was unheard of a few years ago. You always wanted a
yeah.
kind of a human in the loop. That's starting to disappear, and I'm actually pretty surprised. I understand it, but I remember back in the day, like hooking up ISS and Checkpoint, and if ISS saw an attack, it could automatically connect to Checkpoint, modify the rule. It would drop that IP address from
Mhm.
coming in on maybe a specific port or just in general. Well, the problem was when people were coming in through VPN at this one implementation I did, it came across to ISS as some kind of early stage DOS attack. And it said, "Oh,
Sure.
this looks like a DOS attack." So everybody that came across on VPN got blocked.
Yeah,
And then so we unplugged it. We never touched it again. And that was kind of the case for like 20 years. But
yeah.
now people seem to be much more aggressive. And I think they kind of have to.
I completely agree, and I kind of like it, right? Like, I was always when I was on the blue team side of in favor of acting first and then changing it later, right? But people kind of wring their hands and they walk on eggshells. It's like, well, what if we disable the wrong account? What if? And I'm like, well, what if we get ransomware? right? Is that what you got to weigh the risk, right? And understand the business risk of doing those things. So, I completely agree with you. There's a kind of a loosening of, hey, when do we make that decision and pull the ripcord to say, let's kill that account? Because, those of us in the industry a long time have been through maybe several calls where you have to burn down Active Directory and start from scratch. And it is not a good time for anybody, right?
Yeah,
Versus just killing an account and maybe having someone have a bad day, whether it's accidentally or not.
for sure, for sure. Well, Pio, as we wrap up here, I've got one more just kind of general question I'd like to run by you, and this is going to require you to pull out your crystal ball. But you're in the field a lot. You're talking to CISOs. You're talking to security practitioners. What are maybe 2 or 3 of the top things that they seem to be prioritizing as we kind of get ready to go into 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI governance comes to mind.
Mm,
Number one, right? Not just with the internal use of AI in security, but the whole organization, right? As a CISO, you kind of have to put both hats on. I'm kind of overseeing the organization and make sure that the AI decisions are made securely and with the company in mind and business risk. And then what is my SOC doing, right? How are they implementing AI? Those things. Number two, ransomware. I mean, it continues to plague us, man. I've been saying ransomware is going to go away eventually here, because we do know how to mitigate it, right? Like, but mitigate. We do know how to mitigate it, but it keeps creeping in, and the financial motivation of ransomware isn't going to go away, and like it just the last week of EDR bypasses will just show that. I was just reading about them, right? It's kind of crazy. Like we've always known that the advanced attackers can move around your basic protections and even your more advanced stuff, right? So I see that still being a problem, and also a bit of AI backlash, right? Like maybe we went a little bit too far with
for
implementing
sure.
AI in the
As
last.
we always do with every
Yeah,
single technology, always and forever. Yes.
absolutely. So yeah, it's not a stretch to say, hey, we had a knee-jerk reaction. Everyone wanted to implement this. Everyone wanted to put it into their products. Maybe we opened Pandora's box a little too early. And those slow to market, I think, are going to benefit from, hey, we took a methodical, transparent approach to how we implement this in our products and in our operations and in our managed services.
Yeah. That tracks. And if I was to sort of pull out my crystal ball and just focus on AI, since we've been discussing that, I'd say 3 things that I'm seeing. One, I want to make sure that my tools that I'm using on the back end, my platforms, whether it's hyper automation or cloud detection and response or whatever it is leveraging AI, right? You might
Mhm.
as well be taking advantage of these new capabilities, and there's usually value that can be gleaned from that. And not something that's just bolted on, hopefully, so you can check the AI box, but real genuine AI capabilities. The next one is AI attacks that are sort of bot versus bot. So AI going after your systems and not having a back end human there. And we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of that with phishing attacks and all sorts of different things because there's more volume and velocity and variety that you can get from there. And
Yeah.
then the last one is probably, and again, no surprise, but attacks on your AI infrastructure. So whatever you're running in AWS or GCP or Oracle or whatever infrastructure you're running, they have specific AI capabilities and platforms. And I think those are being going after for poisoning and probably other levels of attack as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a gimme. I think anybody could
Yeah.
kind of guess
No,
that where we're going, but yeah.
that's a great one. That's a great one that didn't come to mind off the top of my head. But you look at all the open source that's being rolled
Mm,
out, right?
yeah.
The supply chain attacks are going to continue. All right, just be careful when you roll out new models, when you roll out new open source packages, as you would with anything else, to make sure you scan that stuff and test it before you put it into production, because you never know what a nefarious actor is going to do to try and get money out of you it seems to be the motivation of the day, right? And
100%.
will always be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, PO, thanks so much for being part of the podcast and joining us here on Mitiga Mic, and hopefully we can have you back again soon.
Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate it.